This is an introduction to how to create a view in the Rangecast player. The Rangecast player comes with a set of views that are available automatically, like Play All Channels, which has each channel on its own button, and others that group content by agency, by town, focuses on fire or police, or shows all the channels within a given county. However, it's usually desirable to customize some views that have just the channels you want grouped the way that you want. And there are several very different ways this can be done. So the purpose of this video is to give an overview of the kinds of approaches that are possible for creating customized views. In generally, the most powerful approach is what's called a rules-based approach, or a script. And this lets you express an idea like, for example, you want all the channels in the city of Dallas on their own buttons, or you want all the channels in the town of Fort Worth on their own buttons. And these are done usually in the administrative system for the hub. In the administrative pages, there's an option called Script View Definitions that are passed to the player. If you click that, you get a box that has some definitions of views. So for example, this is how we define the Dallas, Fort Worth, and public safety views that are available right here in the player. And these views are defined in a scripting language. They can be more complex than this. These are just taking all the channels from one jurisdiction or one agency and putting them on a button. But you can have fairly complex scripts that describe how you want to label your buttons, how you want to order them, which specific content you want to include or exclude, or even putting certain channels in priority. And one of the main advantages of using a script is that it accommodates new content very well. If new channels are added to the system, they will be placed automatically on the views that you want according to those rules. So it's very flexible and powerful. It's also possible to create views in the same way right in the player tactically. You can use the same scripting language on the options page to just on the fly make a view. But if they're done in the administrative pages, they're available to all users and they're saved across sessions, which are both advantages. Another way of doing a view that's completely different from that is off the administrative system, the channel reception editor, which programs the scanner radios, going to that page, the option called Constellation. On the Constellation page, there is a place where you can enter a short name for each individual channel, or you can also give a name to a group. So you could, for instance, say all the channels in a group will all be placed together onto a single button with a certain name. That's useful in situations like, for instance, where you've got a lot of tactical channels in the fire department, and you might want to group those all onto a single button. This is a user interface-driven method for creating a single view, which is called the Constellation, which lets you group together either all the channels in a group onto its own button, or several groups onto a single button, and split off if you want individual channels that are especially important to you to have those on their own button. It's, however, somewhat restricted in the flexibility in what you can accomplish this method, but if it works well for what you want to do, it's also a fairly easy approach because it's entirely done with forms and does not require any scripting, anything that feels like a programming environment to work in. And it's also possible in the player to make views just by using the player. So for instance, if we were to turn all the channels off and then we were to turn on some selected group of the broadcast channels here, and at this point we have what is effectively a view. It's an arrangement of channels with certain ones on, certain ones not shown. We could do something like trim it down to just those channels I've selected. Now, this isn't saved. It says at the top here, workspace, not saved, so you know that if you were to change to a different view, you would not come back to this afterwards. And it tells you what this was based on. It was based on the Dallas view. And if you wanted to save this over the short term in the browser, there's ways of saving it for the session. It's fairly easy. Saving longer term is also possible, but that requires creating a separate address that you're storing essentially your customization into, and but that's also an option. And similarly, there's also on the channels library, the list of channels, it's possible through this interface over here as a button manager icon that unlocks some resources for being able to combine channels onto buttons and say how you want things arranged. So this is kind of a way to have a what you see is what you get kind of workspace for doing some deeper design on customizing your views. However, anything done through the player here like this is working with particular channels to put them in particular places, which means if new channels are added to the system, the player won't know how you want to handle those unless you tell it. So this is somewhat more restrictive than a rules-based, but it may be also a more intuitive and easier approach to making scripts or making views. So that's an overview of several different ways that you can make views, and we'll have separate videos going into more depth about each of these individual techniques.